You could be looking at the two of us and a very smiley Roy Cummings. All right, that's the photo we have of you, Roy. And we've got you with a shirt and a tie and a sport jacket also. You are looking dapper on the Miller and Moulton Twitch channel. Top of the morning to you, Roy. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm feeling about as well as I look in that picture, I think.
PewterPirates.com. Follow Roy on Twitter at rcummingsfhcn. rcummingsfhcn. PewterPirates.com. Roy Cummings.
Roy, at the end of the day, a win is a win is a win, particularly this time of year. It wasn't the prettiest thing in the world, but Tampa is playing next week.
Yes, they are. And again, that is the bottom line. It's, you know what, if you survive well enough to come back and overcome, if you just survive, it's really what it is. It's a matter of survival now. That's what the NFL playoffs are. It's a battle. And if you survive it, you move on and you hope to play a little bit better and look better in the next game. They're going to need to, I think. But, at this point, job done.
You know, Roy, I thought the O-line played well. I thought, I know they got technically 3 or 4 sacks, but I really felt that those were like just about the only plays Brady was pressured on. I thought he had a clean pocket with a lot of time to run a lot of downfield stuff, and their wide receivers on their DBs was a big mismatch, and they needed time to expose it. If that line can play this well against the Saints, I think they got a real shot.
Oh, I agree. And it wasn't just pass protection where the line was solid. They were very good in the run game as well. And Leonard Fournette, as Bruce Arians said, had his best game. Bucs run for over 100 yards. Anytime you run for over 100 yards, it's just still the NFL. It helps you. You don't just have to be able to throw it. You got to be able to run it too. And that's what set up a lot of the downfield play action passes and, slowed the Washington defense just enough for Tampa Bay, Tom Brady in particular, to execute. So, the offensive line played extremely well. I thought Tom Brady played well. Leonard Fournette had his best game. Some of the receivers played exceptionally well. Cameron Brate. I thought the play design and then the play calling was very good. I mean, I think you go into a game like that, and you're looking at Gronk as a weapon that you really have to worry about, and yet they almost all but ignored him in terms of the passing game and said, you know what, Cam Brate, this is your opportunity to shine. And he did, of course.
He did. Lot closer than I think people expected it to be. And the fact of the matter is that, they got it done, but defensively against Washington, they allowed this team to hang around. They get Drew Brees next week.
Yeah, and why am I'm not surprised. I mean, look, leading into the game, I had 2 concerns. One was the play of the offensive line against, in particular, that defensive front for Washington, which I think is quite formidable. If Washington has a strength, it's their defensive line, and I was concerned about that. They passed that test. And I was concerned about the defense because we've seen it all year, no matter what scheme it is, whether they're putting the secondary in man-to-man and blitzing or they're just playing soft zones, it doesn't make a difference. You can pass on this football team. And the Washington football team passed on this football team with a quarterback who I don't think he's played 4 games in the NFL. He came to the team off the street, a week ago. If ever there was an opportunity for the Bucs defense to step up and dominate a game, this was it, and they couldn't. And if a player just right out of the box, right off the street, coming off the couch, can pick this team apart the way Tyler Heineke did, what do you expect from Drew Brees? I look for more of the same. I think the Bucs have to be prepared going into next week for a shootout, and I'm sure they are. But can they survive that shootout? That's hard to know. I mean, Brees is going to have to make some critical mistakes. He's going to have to be pressured into mistakes. And I believe the Bucs are capable of that, but I still think Drew Brees has got the ability to pick this team apart and, chalk up 400 yards passing against them.
Well, and we're going to have plenty of time to break that game down, but there's no doubt. I mean, listen, the Saints have whooped them twice, and whatever adjustments Tampa Bay made the second time, they whooped them worse the second time. So clearly right now, the Saints are the Bucs' kryptonite, and they've got a week to figure it out. But getting back, you mentioned Cameron Brate. first off, to dust him out of the mothballs. I mean, I joked with you last week, hey, does Tom even know Cameron Brate's on the team? And then he, thought he was Rob Gronkowski. But that's because, Roy, they left Gronkowski one-on-one against Chase Young multiple times, and he blocked him. I mean, if that didn't show just how valuable and what a legendary tight end he is. They literally lined up and said, one of the 5 best pass rushers in the league, hey, Gronk, you've got him, as if he's a left tackle, and he blocked him.
Yeah, I'll say this. Look, back in the day, before Rob Gronkowski became a Buccaneer, and my focus is always so much on the Buccaneers, and it's hard to watch every team in the NFL regularly and really break down everything that they're doing. The Bucs seldom, if ever, played New England, so you didn't look at them much. I got to be honest. I mean, I knew Rob Gronkowski was a great player, but I didn't have an appreciation for how great he was. And so through his prime, I probably didn't quite develop the appreciation for him that I'm starting to develop now. Because you ask a player of that caliber, he's a Hall of Famer, in a playoff game, again, coming out of retirement, primarily to catch passes from his buddy Tom Brady, to spend a playoff game, in essence, blocking this rookie stud, Chase Young, and he does it. I'm not surprised that he did it, but I think it's a ballsy move on the part of Byron Leftwich and Bruce Arians to develop that idea, and for Rob Gronkowski to just put it to execute it at the level he did. I'm not surprised that he did, but to me, that's buying in. I mean, that's a pro right there. When you tell him, look, you might catch 2 passes this week. We want you to take on Chase Young. We want you to be the guy, because if he won't expect that, he's expecting nothing but the left tackle. He's expecting Donovan Smith. And when he's prepared all week for that, and looked at all the film on how to beat Donovan Smith, and there's lots of ways to do it, all of a sudden we're going to throw you at him, and it's going to twist him into a knot, and he's not going to know what in the world to do. And you know what? Kudos to the Buccaneers for that. Kudos to Rob Gronkowski for buying in. And, of course, kudos for executing the plan as well as he did. It was a master plan. I think that's one thing you can't forget here is Byron Leftwich is taking a lot of heat for his play calling, some of the play design, some of the game plans. You can't knock him here. Offensively, the game plan was just talking the best of the year. It was he saved his best for last week. That's for sure.
Roy, obviously injuries always a part of this, but Rojo didn't play. But more importantly, Alex Kappa, their right guard, fractures his ankle. We've talked all year about just the sensitivity of this offensive line and not a ton of depth. This is something that's a big blow going towards next week.
Yeah, he's played pretty well. You haven't worried a lot about the right guard position this year the way they did a year ago. And Alex Kappa is the reason. It's another good draft pick from Jason Light. He's done a good job developing that kid. Took a little more time than people wanted, but once again, he came from a small school, not a guy that was necessarily brought in to jump in right away. But he's developed into a good, serviceable at least right guard. And you know what? The good news is, let's pick up a player off the scrap heap a little bit, Ted Larson, who's the same kind of guy. Good, serviceable right guard. And that's what Ted Larson is. Yeah, it is a blow, but I think with a week to prepare, Ted Larson should be just fine. Look, this is another guy that Tom Brady's familiar with. Came from the Patriots. Played with him for a number of years. So I think the Bucs are in pretty good stead there. I think they're in decent shape with Ted Larson. You're going to miss Alex Kappa, but I don't think you're going to miss him much. You may not even notice it pretty much the way we didn't notice it too much second half of that football game last week.
Well, Roy, Breeze picked the Bucs apart last time after Tampa Bay really did a good job bottling New Orleans offense for most of the first game, but the Bucs offense and special teams really let them down and put the defense in bad spots. But the Bucs have been unable to block the Saints in the first 2 meetings. And if you take a look at the analytics, it's real simple. And we've known this from football from the beginning of time. You get pressure on the quarterback, you usually win. You get pressure on Brady, he's in middle of the pack at best. if not even worse than that statistically. You don't get pressure on Tom Brady. He's still an elite quarterback. To me, this game comes down to they've got to be able to block the Saints. Can they?
Yeah, you would think that a third time around they would be able to figure something out. But look, Cameron Jordan is as good a player as there is in the league at his position. They look much like Drew Brees can just pick apart any zone, even man-to-man scheme. The Saints have the ability to make you pay up front and shut down your run game, get after your quarterback. They're just that good, and I don't think they get a lot of credit for it because of so many weapons on the other side of the ball. And there's so much talk about, all the receivers and Alvin Kamara and obviously Drew Brees and Taysom Hill. And, so there's so much over there that the defense just kind of gets forgotten about. And you can't forget about it. It's as strong as there is in the league. There's a reason this team won double-digit games this year. There's a reason they're going to the next level of the playoffs. There's a reason they basically dominated the Bears. And Mitchell Trubisky played a pretty good football game, by the way, against them. But the Saints have the ability to completely shut you down. And a team like the Bucs, again, you would think the third time around, maybe the Bucs would have the edge here. They're going to come out with something different. But is it going to make a difference? It's going to have to. But I don't know how much of a difference it's going to make. The Saints are a team that most people. I think the majority of people said that's probably the team that's going to go to the Super Bowl in the NFC. And I think, and that's, let's face it, that's who the Bucs have next, and they got to figure out a way. The good news is they're familiar with everything they've done, but don't be surprised if the Saints bring something different. The Bucs have to.
Well,
and
Roy, the Bucs are going to have to bring something different defensively. I know David mentioned the first game, but for a while here. And it happened to Tennessee yesterday at the end of the day. Tennessee was one of the worst teams in the league on third down. You can't play that type of football in the postseason. The Bucs were awful on third down against Washington. This isn't against New Orleans. This isn't against Green Bay. This isn't against Russell Wilson in the first half of the season. This is against a guy who's played 4 snaps in the league. I mean, we can say all we want about blocking, but they've got to get the defense off the field this week at some point.
Yeah, they do. And look, again, I'm not surprised. I mean, look, the Bucs have gotten to they made it to the playoffs this year by beating up on a bunch of bad teams. The Bucs had, I would say, as it turns out, one of the easiest schedules you could have. The last 4 or 5 games of the year were all against teams that were just lost. I mean, just lost. Detroit, Atlanta, fired coaches. Missing coordinators, the whole bit, and the Bucs didn't, in a couple of cases, yeah, they kind of dominated, but there you could just see even in the games against Detroit and Atlanta, it's kind of like you can see little areas here where they're just not sharp, and they never have been. They've overcome the inability, it seems, what they had early on in the year of hitting on the deep ball. They figured that out, but defensively they still haven't figured that out. Sometimes they can run, sometimes they can't. I still think you can get after Tom Brady if you figure out how to expose Donovan Smith. Tristan Wirfs has turned into an absolute star, in my opinion. I mean, and that's one of the reasons the O-line's been strong. But you're right, this defense, for all the star power there is up front, Jason Pierre-Paul, Ndamukong Suh, the linebackers, and granted they were missing Devin White, but Levante David, the secondary is just so vulnerable, and I just think that's where it all lies. You can throw against this team, anybody can, and if you can somehow figure out how to run against them, a couple teams have. You're talking about trouble, and the Bucs have won despite playing bad football all season long. They kind of did it again against Washington. Sooner or later, they're not going to be able to overcome those mistakes. Is it this week? I don't know. Next week? You got to think it's coming soon. I still don't think there's a Super Bowl in this team. Getting there, maybe, but I don't think they can win it, and it's because they just can't. They haven't found their best game yet.
To further Roy's point, their last 5 wins, teams all below 500, 2 against Atlanta, 1 against Detroit, Carolina, and Washington. That's the 5-game winning streak. And I believe when you look back, what looked like a difficult schedule on paper, they beat one team, I believe, with a winning record, but it was Green Bay, which is why, and we all keep that game in the back of our minds, because when they walked off the field that day, they looked like the best team in the NFC, but they have not played like that since. Roy, as always, appreciate your time. And this is maybe one of the 3 best pictures you've ever taken that we have on our Twitch screen. I will say you look fantastic.
There's a reason I keep it up there, gentlemen.
Roy, be
Thanks,
safe.
Roy.
Be well.